Good morning, all. Welcome to Public Works meeting. I'm just waiting for Mr. Dickinson, but we'll start the meeting. I'd like to approve the minutes of the last previous meeting. I'm waiting for them. Out back there. All right. Ms. Wood, Mr. Taylor, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passed. We're going to start the action agenda, and I think we'll start with Justin from the railroad. Will give us a report.
Well, good morning, everybody. So we're breaking into our spring season. This Saturday we'll start our regular spring service, which will run on Saturdays and Sundays through the month of June. The only exception will be this Sunday. We'll be running our Easter brunch train out of Saratoga Springs, which will go up to Thurman and then return back to Saratoga. So that will be in place of our regular train service. However, that will be the only exception. April 23rd, we'll be running a FAM train, which will bring in various tour operators from far away as Belgium, and I think we have a couple people coming from Germany as well. We'll be hosting them, and that train will run from Saratoga up to Hadley Luzerne Station, where they will disembark and go about the rest of their tour to various hotels and other attractions in the area. As I said before, our regular summer schedule starts July 3rd. It will run 5 days a week, with Wednesdays and Thursdays being off days. In an effort to attract more passengers to the coach section of our train, we are currently totally redoing two of the interiors of our coach cars. One is just a straight coach car with a bathroom. It will receive all new furnishings, new upholstered seats, and the other one will receive the same carpet, new seats, and it's going to have the addition of a cafe inside the coach. So I'm sure some of you are familiar with the cafe service that Amtrak offers on their trains. This will be the same. We'll still have our full meal service in first class on our dome cars, but this is a way to bring more amenities to the coach passengers to hopefully increase the coach ticket sales. That was really all I had today. I'm keeping it very brief. We do have our Director of Government Affairs today, Mr. David Simpson, and Mr. Chairman, if I could turn it over to him.
Sure.
Okay. David?
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, David.
I think most of you are aware that our operating lease that enables our operation between Saratoga and North Creek, expires at the end of June 2016. This operation has proven to be a very challenging one for us financially. Our passenger numbers started out strong, but have sort of been the same for a number of years. And all along, I think we have had a recognition that making this property sustainable from an economic perspective required not only that we grow the revenue base for the passenger service, but also that we find sources of revenue from moving freight off the line. There are a variety of opportunities to move freight, and some of the businesses in this region, such as Barton Mines, have been very cooperative in trying to work with us to do that. And there's some smaller volumes of other inbound and outbound commodities than we can target. However, the biggest freight opportunity by far for us is represented up by Tahaz at the old National Lead site, where there are hundreds of thousands of tons of rock sitting on the ground, some of which specs out as very good quality aggregate. Getting access to that site required that we bring back into service the 29.7 miles beyond North Creek that goes up to the mine site near Newcomb. And So we did that purchase, and we spent about $500,000, basically clearing the trees out of the right-of-way, because you couldn't get a train up there without running into a tree, which is sort of a problem. But the right-of-way is, you know, it's intact. You can actually move a locomotive up there and back, but it certainly needs a lot more investment in terms of becoming suitable for, you know, regular freight service of bringing that rock down the hill. You know, we're a small company. We have 13 operations, a couple in the UK, and you know, most short lines basically operate as feeders to the big railroads in North America. They kind of serve as sub-franchisees moving freight. And you know, we unusually, compared to most players in the industry, have a real mix of passenger and freight service. So you know, we think that properly managed, you can operate a line like this and do a good job and actually serve both markets. It's real tough to do it on passenger service alone. And in fact, the number of regular passenger service operations in North America that operate without some kind of operating subsidy is very, very small. So we don't look for operating subsidies. We don't think it's a good business model. We don't think it's politically viable for you to go back and ask taxpayers to spend money on just paying for the basic operation. So, you know, we've gone through, we've looked at the economics, we've sort of done some pro formas to figure out, you know, what we would need to do for this property to at least be break even. Well, if you were to do it on passenger revenue alone, you'd need and you know, along with some increases in service frequency as well, but you need about 100,000 people a year, which is over double what we're doing today. Maybe someday we'll get there, but you know, it's tough. The other thing we need to do is to move some freight, and so you know, after a lot of soul searching internally, we kind of said, well, you know, what do we need structurally on the Saratoga North Creek operation for it to be something that we can continue to take the business risk going forward after the end of the lease at the end of June 2016, and we came up with a series of steps. There's three main elements that we really need to have in place. Number one, we really want the line north of North Creek to be converted back to public ownership. We think it makes sense for the whole line to be publicly owned. We think it's consistent with the vision of having a public-private partnership in this area, and with the First Wilderness people that builds tourism and has that part of the property available for passenger service as well, and we might be able to develop some things with the First Wilderness people that actually takes people up to the trailheads for the high peaks. And you know, there's a number of things that would sort of fortify the First Wilderness vision of the corridor with that sort of sale back to the public sector. Number two, there needs to be an investment, most likely state funds, in that track of about $5 million to get it into an adequate condition to start moving the rock down the hill. And that's $5 million that we don't have. And you know, some of it is some grade crossing improvements. There's some basic stabilization of the right-of-way, reballasting ties, some rail replacement. Certainly not all the rail replacement that you might be able to justify, but that's the $5 million would be what's required to get the right-of-way to a condition where we could start on a regular basis hauling rock down the hill. There's more money required after that, but you know, if we can get a system going to move the rock down the hill, you know, we believe that given some adequate transportation economics, we can move 1.5 million or 2 million tons a year down the hill, which when you take that sort of business volume, if you can demonstrate the market and it's moving on a long-term basis, then you can go ahead and set up some sort of a financing scheme to justify the rest of the capital renewal that would be required on that line. So we have some political and institutional challenges for some of the other opportunities on the market or on the line beyond the rock, in that our only interchange partner at Saratoga Springs is the Canadian Pacific Railway. And Canadian Pacific Railway, being a big railway, they want their long hauls and they want their traffic to go north to Montreal and then across Canada, even if you're really trying to go south to the Gold Coast. And so we've tried to do some things. Justin and our marketing folks have worked very hard with Barton and tried to move some traffic, say down to Louisiana, for example, and it went north and across and down and took 41 days and you know, simply wasn't successful. So you have a shipper like Barton Mines that is very sympathetic to moving their traffic by rail, and they don't have a service option available to them that's competitive in the marketplace. So we've applied to the Surface Transportation Board for them to order an interchange for us at Saratoga Springs with the Norfolk Southern Railway. This is a physical possibility because Canadian Pacific and Norfolk Southern are in the midst of have negotiated and are waiting approval of a sale of what was the southernmost part of the D&H Railway to the NS. And NS's trains will actually do their interchange at Saratoga. So you'll see Norfolk Southern trains with Norfolk Southern crews and locomotives come right into the terminal, which is the southern end of our operation. So physically, this isn't an issue. We went to CP and asked them to enable us to set up an interchange there, and they wouldn't consider it. And so for that reason, we've gone to the Surface Transportation Board and asked them, as one of the conditions approving this bigger NSCP arrangement, to help that, you know, to order that interchange to be put in place. So that particular change will help our general freight marketing capabilities because NS is capable and has routes that go where most of the traffic wants to go. It doesn't want to go to Montreal. It wants to go south south and to the East Coast. And the ROC, we do have new negotiations in place with CP that hopefully will give us a better factor for CP's participation in getting the ROC to the Port of Albany, because most of the aggregates market that we're targeting is in the New York City metro region, and the fastest, and well, not the fastest, but the most economical way to get it there and to serve various distribution receiving points in the New York metro region is to get the rock down to the water, put it on barge in Albany, and then it can go to various receiving points in the New York metro area. That's the big market for that rock. It specs out very well. A lot of the rock that we're competing against, believe it or not, comes from Nova Scotia by barge. But we're confident that given a reasonable rate to get the traffic from the end of our line down to the Port of Albany would make us competitive in that market, and we could get some long-term contracts in place. So my reason for bringing this all to you today is we want to be transparent about this. We really need a game plan by the end of this calendar year that will show that we're on a path to sustainability, and you know, we're having 7-digit losses in this operation, and as a small company, you can only do that so long. So we really need a vision of a different world here that will bring us to a point where we're at least breaking even on the operation. So we're in discussions with Essex and Hamilton County because, of course, the line north of North Creek is primarily within those two jurisdictions. We're talking to various folks at the state, and we're looking for, you know, potential sources of funding to achieve the elements that I just described to you today, particularly for the part of the track north of North Creek. So that's it. I'll take any questions, or if you would like to.
Anybody have any questions?
Yes.
Very interesting dissertation there on the accompaniment reform. Is there something in particular that was from the county board, or you just want to answer something back?
Well, you know, obviously we're looking for all sources of political support for actually getting a funding request honored down in Albany. So I think that's really the main thing we need right now. And we're initiating discussions and had preliminary discussions in Essex and Hamilton County. We're discussing, you know, we've just had some discussions with Wayne on the first wilderness concepts. the things that we need out of this, in addition to this recapitalization that I just described, is we need a structure that it's, easy for us to work with. And of course, the more political jurisdictions you add, the more challenging it gets. And poor Justin, he has to run a railroad. So, I know there's some restrictions in New York State on forming new joint powers agencies, but I think, we at least want some coordination mechanisms. So if we have 3 counties plus the town of Corinth involved in this, that we're not, quadrupling the hill every time we need to do something. So that sort of structural consideration would need to be part of, what we need long term to make this a good operation.
Are we looking at that?
Yeah, we voted on it 2 weeks ago to start our, group with Corinth. And, but if there's anything particular or different people that we should maybe get a letter out from, this board and the full board, just let me know.
And we've had some of those discussions with Kevin and
Okay.
Paul, so yes,
Fine.
we're
They're up
that.
on it. That's
We
good.
have a formal, set of talking points, and we can get some copies made for you here, so that, we wanted to be careful about the messaging, because I know, the newspapers and everything get out ahead of us a lot of times, and I think we're trying to be as open as we can about this, and we wanna make sure that everyone's getting the same message, so.
That's Dave.
You talked about spending $5 million to redo the rails. What's the sustainability of the jobs that are gonna be in that marketplace? Is that gonna last, the tailings, as we used to call them, is that a year's worth? Is that 5 years worth? Is it 10?
We easily, given a handling system that can deliver product into that New York market, we easily have 20 years of volume there. There's no problem with running out of product.
And to do those tracks, you're gonna have no problem with the park agency?
It's an existing right-of-way. It's actually already been restored to service, so, we already went down that road and, ultimately even got the to agree that it was warranted. And, essentially what we're doing up at Tahaz is we're removing the byproducts of an old industrial operation and getting them out of the park, so we're not really, causing any new, disruptive natural resource things to go on, so.
Jim?
Where are you gonna get or if this plays out, where are you gonna get the $5 million from is it from the state?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, yeah, my suspicion is it would likely be part of an economic development proposal, with the state, and of course, it's made more complex by the fact that, the line is, as you leave the station in North Creek, you're actually in 3 counties. You start out in Warren County for a short distance, and then you're in Essex County, and then there's like 20 miles in Hamilton County. And they're part of a different economic development zone as well, they're the North Country. And of course, their history of getting state funding for economic development initiatives is actually fairly strong. So, we're hopeful. We're trying to get around. I know, time is short here. We're trying to get around and spend time and sort of, lay the groundwork out for people as quickly as we can, so.
The budget is already pretty much done. You're kind of drafting it at, does the state have funding and other?
There's a competitive process for funding, particularly for the North Country regions, that is now underway, and I guess those packages are due in the fall. I believe it's September, so.
Yeah, part of the budget, I think, includes $1.5 billion for those. On a side note, but relating to freight, whatever happened to the low-level radioactive waste shipments? Is that still a potential revenue source? Or
It is. I think that, the competitive situation there in terms of their alternatives is not as favorable as we thought. So, whether or not that happens is somewhat in doubt, It was, the original handling scheme would have had it trucked over in containers, there'd never be any bulk things anywhere around here, and then the containers would get loaded onto rail cars, and we'd take them down, interchange them. They'd have to be handled by CP, handed off to CSX, and then CSX would take them off, way down to their ultimate territory. So, You know, the folks responsible for disposing of this are looking at other alternatives, and I'll have to say, the last readings we had from them is there's probably some things they can do that are gonna be more economic than what we had, hoped to be able to do here. I mean, we were looking forward to that because it was gonna be a way to sort of at least get a base freight operation going on the line and be a long-term source of revenue, but I'd have to say we're not real optimistic about that right now, so.
Any other questions? Oh, thank you for your,
Thank you.
right. Move along, Jeff, you wanna start the,
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman.
resolutions?
Yes, the first action item is on page 1. This is to authorize, a after sunset, race for this year and for subsequent years. This is involving the Adirondack Race Management, Group and their annual Flashlight 5K. As you recall, I think last month we brought a similar request for Wagner Relay, which was a recurring event, requiring board approval. We'd like to seek approval for this event, not only for this year, but for subsequent years. And then the usage would be by permit approved by the county attorney.
Mr. Dickinson, Mr. Vanslo, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
They had this race in Key West when I went down there, and it took me an extra hour to get up. It's only one road. Oh, bicycle.
The next request is on page 2. This is, a request for authorization for our Parks and Recs division to accept 9 bicycle racks donated by the Glens Falls Hospital Health Promotion Center. They contacted us, they had, some funding and wanted to donate these racks, so we'll be placing them in county facilities.
All right, that's good. Mr. Taylor, Mr. Vanslo,
Well, actually, I wanted to move 2 through 5, I think they're all, similar.
we have a motion to go to 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, Ms. Simpson. Bud, is that all right? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Pass.
And the next item I had, I apologize, didn't make it into the packet. I did have a jam this morning. Apparently that was the update on the festival, on the Maple Festival. Must have had some sticky syrup left over on it. And so that didn't make it into the packet. I'll give you an update, next month for that. But generally the event was a success. The other thing I wanted to give you an update on, and I'm passing around some photos of our stocking length fish for the spring. You see I've got 3 one-year-old, rainbow trout, 9-inch average. We've got 1-year-old brook trout, 10-inch average, and, 2-year-old rainbow trout, 15-inch average, and those will be stocked this spring.
All right, any questions on that?
We'd like detailed maps.
Yeah, where are they going? We wanna know.
You gotta meet Ralph Bentley to the
Won't
site.
be April
Yeah,
1st
they
this
cover
year.
all of them.
Won't be April 1st, will it?
No,
What do you
no,
say?
no.
All right, there's privilege to the floor. Anybody else have anything else to bring up? Discussion on Parks and Recs? All right, we'll move right into the DPW. I'm gonna just start off, Jen, with the
Okay.
action agenda.
Thanks. Page 1 is a request for a new contract. This is for cold-in-place recycling. This is the hammer mill method that we use on, various roads. This is an annual bid, and we're recommending award to Bell and Flynn.
Ms. Richard. Ms. Dixon. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Okay, the next, 4 resolutions all relate to Valley Road, bridge project. The first one on page 3 is a request for, authorize supplemental agreement number 2, with New York State DOT. This is just our next segment of the grant. It covers our construction cost, and you'll see the funding breakdown of approximately 1.47 million in federal share, 230,000 in state share, and 139,000 in local match. That local match will transfer here in the next request.
Anyone wanna make that motion? Ms. Frazier, Mr. Conover. Any questions? All in favor? Passed.
And page 10 is our request to increase that capital project, and for that grant, and also the local match to be transferred from, 9950.910, which is our transfers to capital projects.
Conover, Ms. Dickinson. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Passed.
And resolution on page 11 is to authorize a supplemental agreement with, Creighton Manning Engineers on the project. And, this supplemental will cover their construction inspection services.
Ms. Wood, Mr. Simpson. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Passed.
Okay, next on page 19 is our authorization for a new contract. We will be bidding the project here shortly. Our bid opening date is scheduled for April 7th. We would like authorization to proceed to award to the lowest responsible bidder, and we'll have an update actually, we should have an update for finance on that contractor prior to the April board meeting.
Ms. Dickinson. Ms. Sokol, is that your hand out there?
That'd be me, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Want to give everybody a chance. You're hiding behind, I can't see. Move on to the next one.
Okay, next on page 20, this is to authorize a supplemental agreement with Clark Patterson Lee. This is for our Blair Road project. Recall, last month, we authorized some just compensations. This relates to that. This is an update to their contract. This really is a pass-through to their right-of-way consultant, RK Light, for the right-of-way acquisitions on that project.
Ms. Wood? Mr. Simpson? Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Passed.
Okay. Next on page 25 is a request for out-of-state travel for members of my paving crew. As the committee knows, we do annual training. This rounds out some of the training we've done over the last few years. This is to authorize 5 members of DPW. This is a budgeted expense, and the training occurs in end of May, May 19th through the 22nd, down in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. On page 27 is a description of the type of things that they'll be training on.
Mr. Conover? Ms. Dickinson? Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Passed.
Okay, the next 3 items I have are intent to backfill positions. The first on page 28 is intent to backfill auto mechanic number 6 position due to retirement.
This won't change your budget.
No, this is a budgeted position. We actually have another vacancy currently that we're trying to hold on to and see how Dan Smith, my new shop manager, has some recommendations on how to adjust things at the shop. So we have 2 current mechanic vacancies. This would fill one of those vacancies.
Ms. Dickinson, Mr. Taylor, any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Passed.
I should note that I have not spoken to Budget Officer Frank Thomas on any of these yet. I was expecting him to be here, so I'll update the committee, obviously, if he has any issues with these. Oh, he did? Oh, great. Joan just mentioned that he signed them already, so. The next item is on page 29. This is to fill the anticipated vacancy of sign maintenance worker number 2. This is for Joan's husband, Steve, and his last day is April 29th. So I'm requesting this authorization now with an effective date of April 30th so that we can advertise and conduct interviews prior to his viewing.
Ms. Dickinson, Ms. Simpson? Any questions? All in favor? With regrets? All right, move on.
And the next next request is on page 30. This is to backfill a vacant position of assistant engineer. This is a position that became vacant over the winter, and with some of our other budget overruns and we decided to hold this open as long as we could. I recently went through a review with my engineering staff on our workload and feel it's necessary to fill this position now, heading into the construction season. This is a budgeted position.
Ms. Dickinson, Ms. Frazier, any questions?
Who was in it?
One of my younger engineers, Walter Pykars, if you might have seen him out on some of the road projects, very tall and a beard.
That's how you describe him to me, too.
Very tall and a beard. You would, if you'd have seen him, you'd know who I was talking about. He sticks out.
All right, any other questions on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
And the next request on page 31, the request to transfer some funding. This is actually due to a budgeting error that we didn't catch. Last year, we had eliminated a full-time Parks and Recs position and transferred some of the salary into a part-time code. And with the thought that we could survive without that full-time position. At the time, we had moved 24,000 last year, and we hired 2 part-time laborers to get us through really our busiest maintenance section. That part-time code didn't make it into our 2015, and we didn't catch it. So what we'd like to do is transfer enough for 1 person this year. We have a relatively light construction schedule for Parks and Recs. You might recall last year we were working on train stations and had some other projects underway, including a new pond at the hatchery. This year I think we can do with 1 seasonal employee, and then obviously going into next year we'll review that again and see if we need to bump that number back up to the 2014 amount. But, so that first request for transfer of $12,000 will cover that. The second one is relating to services to other governments for salaries. Again, this was an adjustment that we made last year that didn't make it into our 2015 budget. We do use some overtime when we pay for other county or other towns and municipal entities. This is just to get the money there so that we don't run in the negative when we know it will occur. And then all of those codes end up getting adjusted at the end of the season, depending on how much work we do for the towns, how much revenue we recoup, and then we apply the actual salaries.
Sokol. Ms. Dickinson, any questions on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
The next item is on page 32. And really, this is just a FYI for the committee to get a certain project back on your radar that we haven't really talked about for a few years. That's relating to the Middleton Bridge, which is a bridge over the Scroon. It runs from town of Chester to town of Bolton. Actually, our current location is town of Warrensburg to town of Bolton is where the current bridge is. Some time ago, we went through a review of options on the project, and the board had decided probably 3 or 4 years ago to relocate the bridge. The bridge is currently pretty close to our County Route 11 location. There's a bridge there over the Scroon. We had approached DOT with the concept of moving the bridge about 2.5 miles north upriver, which put it into more of a concentration of homes and businesses. And that would move the bridge out of Chester and Bolton, or excuse me, out of Warrensburg and Bolton into Chester and Horicon. The problem with that relocation was there's strips of DEC property on each side of the river. We immediately determined that DEC was calling it Forest Preserve, ORPS was calling it not Forest Preserve. So we have 2 state agencies that were in disagreement about the status of the property. And so in petitioning the state to be able to use those areas for the bridge abutments, we are caught between 2 different agencies with differing positions on the property. At that point, I had conferred with the county attorney, and he had some correspondence with the Attorney General's office to have them issue an opinion and get these 2 state agencies in agreement one way or the other so that we knew how to proceed on the bridge. That's about the status it's been in since I think, early 2012. So we've been in that status for almost 3 years, waiting for an opinion from the Attorney General's office. You'll see on page 32, I asked Martin to do a follow-up on that, and he sent this letter again. Essentially, Attorney General said that they can't make a decision until they get comments from ORPS and DEC, both of which have not provided comment. So we're stuck on the project. The project can't proceed as the board has intended with relocating it 2.5 miles north. The other issue with the project is because the construction was delayed, it was pushed post-transportation improvement program. So we had funding lined up through AGFTC in a federal grant to relocate this bridge. Because of the delays, it kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed. Now the project is what we call post-tip, meaning it is not on the construction schedule for the next 5 years. It's still listed as a potential project, but it's not funded. It's what we call post-tip. So I think we're getting to a point, we're at a decision point for the county on how we want to proceed. And so my thought is that we'll probably need to give the committee a good update next month and really bring everyone back up to speed on where we were at a few years ago. The options we reviewed, what the decision of the board was. Going forward, our options are either to push on this land use or this land disagreement between ORPS and DEC, try and get them on the same page, and then we'll know how to proceed. Or we can get funding to remove the existing bridge, which has been closed for 4 or 5 years now, and it's hanging, not hanging, it's sitting over the river, but at some point it needs to be removed. We can get funding to do the removal, but once we do that, we're unlikely to get funding to do the replacement unless it's part of a combination project.
So this property that they're squabbling over, I used to own property in your town right there. The property I owned had essentially a 10-foot fishing strip owned by DEC. Is that what that's what they're claiming is forest?
I don't remember if it was exactly 10 feet. For some reason, 20 feet.
Narrow.
It was I think there's a 20-foot strip on each side.
The water was higher.
It might be, depending on what time of year you measure it. So, that is exactly it. And we had been in touch with DEC, and specifically Supervisor Bentley, who was sitting on the Fish and Wildlife Board, had approached them and said, you know, part of the purpose of those strips of land is for fishing access. And we included as part of the replacement project, actually a fishing pier and a handicap access that would be integrated into the wing wall and abutment area. And we thought that they would see that as a positive and see that as a good use of the property, not only for the bridge, but for the handicap fishing access. The problem is, once it got to a point where that sounded good to the fishery and wildlife guys, but once it got to the point where we were talking with attorneys, we ran into issues with the forest preserve restrictions. We know the state is not paying local taxes on that land, so that's where the discrepancy is between the ORPS and DEC. And our understanding is there are other state lands that are in similar disagreement across within our county and neighboring counties as well.
Any questions, Ms. Connell?
Yeah, Jeff, I think you're absolutely correct. I think now's the time, we're closely approaching the time when we really need to perhaps rethink this. I mean, I think the initial thought of moving it into Chester and Horicon from its present location made some sense because of the proximity of the bridge at County Route 11. However, maybe if we, maybe as a viable option down the road, maybe we, utilizing the abutments that already exist there at the existing bridge, maybe a new bridge there and an improved road on that dirt road is maybe even a less expensive option than constructing. Just offhand, what was the price tag that was initially put on that bridge? New bridge.
For the original bridge in that location, I think it was in the neighborhood of $1.5 million back then.
And the new bridge?
It was something around 2.8 2.7, 2.8, I think it was pushing 3 million.
Pushing 3 million, so I think that, especially given the demands, all of the demands on the tip these days, and on roads that have high volume traffic that need to be improved, and bridges that need to be improved, and, I don't know, I think it may be time to maybe consider, maybe from a certain perspective, less desirable options, but perhaps more economical options. I don't know, just put that out there as a thought.
You must have been reading my mind. You know, it seems to me the real issue for the people that live on the other side of that river is, in times of high water, the road that's existing floods, and they have an issue of getting in and out. And, I think it makes more sense, maybe Bolton and Horicon and the county can work on a better solution that costs everybody, every taxpayer, less money, 'cause ultimately that's what it would be. An improved road on the other side would solve or cure the need of having that bridge. And that's a $3 million plus project. You know, whether it's federal, county, or town taxes that are paying for it.
And perhaps we could, those elements that we could get into the federal aid program, perhaps could once again find their place into the federal program. Just a thought, I would agree with my friend from Horicon. I mean, there's no sense in keep trying to put a square peg into a round hole, especially on what's going to be a very expensive project. Whereas, I think if that road were improved, and possibly even reestablishing the bridge on the existing abutment, we would save money and address most, but perhaps not all, of the goals that were originally intended. But that would have to be looked at, that would have to be evaluated. Maybe now's the time to do that.
Are you two guys saying the same thing, or you took?
Yeah,
Basically.
we are. We're not even conferring on this ahead of time.
We're tight these days.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that.
Well, I mean, at the rate it's going with all these agencies, that might be the best solution.
Is it possible to improve the road so the bridge would become unnecessary?
The concept of improving the road was looked at back then. We actually tried to take the funding from the county bridge in its current location and say, why keep this bridge in the inventory if all we need to do is shift the money over and reconstruct and raise the town road on the other side. Unfortunately, we had constraints with the funding where it was dedicated bridge funding. It couldn't be used on a road. So they basically told us, well, you can not replace the bridge, but we can't move the money into the road project. That would have to be, other funding. That road wouldn't be a federally eligible road too. So we have some certain constraints when it comes to grant funding for that. It would have to be, I believe it would likely have to be a locally funded project, either, county or town would have to foot that bill. The other challenge, I think, with replacing the bridge where it stands now is some of the guidance that DOT is getting from the governor's office on how they select projects has changed a lot in recent years. And in the past, our TIP projects were basically, there was a formula that was used at DOT to divide funding into those MPO regions, those Metropolitan Planning Organizations. And once it got to that level, the MPO could decide which bridges were funded. And that, for us, was a very good process. We had a little bit of input from northern Saratoga County in the MPO, and then it was pretty much Warren County and Washington County and some of the towns that are involved in the ATFTC as well. And so that process was always very good for us. It was really a good process to go through and have our projects, considered. Now, when it comes to bridge replacements, they're looking statewide. And they have an application and a scoring process where we're competing, each of our bridges for replacement is competing against bridges statewide. And so naturally, they look at, and they're looking at factors such as, their daily traffic count, they're looking at economic benefit, they're looking at, you know, the need for the bridge, the redundancy of the bridge. And I think, I don't wanna say that we can't pursue that, we can certainly pursue it, but I think it would be very challenging to get, funding for the bridge in its current location, because it's 7/10 of a mile from the County Route 11 bridge. And, the other factor that frankly goes against us is it's been closed for 4 or 5 years now. Obviously, the longer it's closed, the more difficult it is to make the argument that it's necessary to replace. So we can, I think the way to do it is maybe to bring the committee up to speed and some of the new members up to speed on everything that's been considered, and then, between now and next committee, maybe I can talk to, our partners in AGFTC and see what they think about, you know, the likelihood of success on either of those tacks. Certainly, we can pursue improvements on the road, and I know Town of Bolton did some improvements, back a few years ago when we talked about it. I know, the elevation of the road was brought up, at least in its lowest section, some.
Yeah, we've been having, flooding issues there as well, and a new bridge doesn't resolve the flooding issues or the traffic issues, it just gives us a new bridge. The other question I think you should evaluate is if, when you pursue that federal and state funding, you also have to meet their standards relative to the bridge, which is what moves it into such an expensive bridge. But could we put it's a one-lane bridge that's there now, served that area well for a long time. If we were to pay for it ourselves, we might be able to come forward with a structure that met our requirements, but was less expensive substantially than having to go through a federal or state program. And I'd ask you to evaluate that as well.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. I think the net cost to the county would be much greater, because of our, you know, the funding shares that are involved when it's a federal aid project. You are right, we could do a much less robust design for that. I don't believe the existing abutments are something that can be reused. We'd have to reevaluate that. It may be a complete replacement of superstructure and substructure, which on a bridge of that size, we haven't done one in-house, and we haven't managed one with county dollars only. That would be the largest, longest bridge and most difficult installation we've done to date, but we could certainly look at that cost.
Look good on your resume.
I think my
Mr.
resume
Taylor.
looks good already, but.
Jeff, what's the expected, vehicle count that will go over that bridge in a daily?
Last 4 or 5 years, 0.
And that's what makes me ask the question, if we've gone without it for 4 or 5 years.
Why are you going on
I think it was very low. There were obviously times when, you know, when Riding High would first open, and there would be some people would go that way, but normally if the town road was okay, that was the normal access for most of the people accessing Riding High. I think the last vehicle was either mine or Kevin Hajos's as we drove over the bridge, and literally, I think that might have been the day before we got the red flag that closed it.
What do you expect vehicle usage to be on the bridge?
I think the counts were maybe in the teens, maybe a dozen to 20 cars a day. Back is what I recall.
What is the local match on, say if that bridge is $3 million, is it 5%? I think that's the point that I see is that 5% is better well spent, maybe working with the towns and improving that road, forgo the $3 million project. I mean, it's been out for so many years, and this hurdle here, we don't know where we're gonna come out on that.
Yeah, I think the bridge in that location was something in the neighborhood of 1.5, but I don't have the numbers with me.
Set the precedent for your bridge.
So
That was my next question. I got one more question about the other bridge.
I knew that was gonna come up.
Have you had any, response back on the borings?
I don't know. It was when it crossed my desk, but I'll check on you. I apologize. I don't know what the status is. We should have gotten the report by now. And I know when I talked to engineering about it, the minute they were gonna get that, soils geotechnical report, they were gonna forward it on to, the town and your engineer.
Okay.
So if you haven't gotten it, we probably haven't received it.
Okay.
All right, privilege of the floor, any other discussion? Before we adjourn, you wanna go over the overtime budget or anything, or you just wanna?
Well, they're there, if anyone has any questions, certainly let me know. We will be giving an update too on salt. We did have, a little bit of a reprieve here last month, where we had a relatively nice, March. So I think a lot of that, projected shortfall that we were looking at last month on salt usage has gone away, so, Marvin helped us out a lot. But I'll give an update next month.
Well, you may not have used much salt, but it's certainly a crappy month.
All right, motion adjourned? Wood, Sims, all in favor?
Oh, that's